Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic Roundtable Show. This is episode 479. We record this live every Friday at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Also got a fantastic guest in the house. We've got Rob Rayling joining us. It should be an exciting discussion. I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves. Rob, would you like to quickly introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Sure. Thank you so much for the invitation. I am a software developer from years back, turned software entrepreneur. I founded an ESP called Drip that I sold to Lead Pages. I'm co-founder of MicroConf, and I run a podcast called Startups for the Rest of Us it's approaching its 500th episode. So those are the key highlights. Yeah,
and you're hiding in your bunker. You're not going to die of the virus, are you?
I hope not. I'm on North Shore of Lake Superior, so I'm excited that the Wi-Fi is holding up. This is a first to be video live streaming from there.
It's much appreciated. And I've got my friend Chris. Chris, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Chris from Lifter LMS, have a learning management system for WordPress, and I have a podcast for course creators called LMS Cast.
And I've got my friend and joint co-host of my interview show, Adrian. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Adrian. I'm the CEO and founder of Groundhog. We produce and sell marketing automation plugins for businesses that use WordPress.
And I've got my long-time friend and associate, John Locke. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. John Locke, doing SEO for manufacturing and industrial firms.
And I've got my friend Spencer. Spencer, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Spence from LaunchFlows.com. We help people with marketing automation for WordPress.
Right. Before we go into the main stories of the week, folks, I want to talk about one of our sponsors, and that's LaunchFlows. And what does LaunchFlows does? What does LaunchFlow do, I should say? Well, basically, you need WooCommerce with LaunchFlows, but when you combine those two with a modern page builder, preferably Elementor, you can build some fantastic funnels, not only for e-commerce, shopping cart funnels, but any type of funnel. And it's really, really easy. Loads of people have been frustrated with WooCommerce and its lack of ability to really design really beautiful shopping cart experiences, plus the ability to build modern funnel systems. With this combination now, you can do what you want to do or what your clients want to do. So go over to LaunchFlows, look at the product, and I suggest that you should buy it. And also they're giving us a great coupon code offer for you listeners and viewers, and that's WP-Tonic Rocks. I repeat that, WP-Tonic Rocks, and you get 25%. And the main thing, do remember to tell them that you heard about the offer on the WP-Tonic show. On to the first story. 5 moves that big tech platforms like Google and Instagram should make amid the COVID-19 crisis. What did you think of this one, Chris?
I thought it was an awesome move by, this is Rand's article. Yeah, I think what it really illustrates is the spirit of the entrepreneur to jump in and solve problems. Google Maps not being accurate, or Google business listings not being accurate, helping people who are trying to get the word out be able to leverage Instagram in a more effective way. I think I was just overall impressed with the problem solving ability and the opportunity spotting ability of a tech entrepreneur. Is just really impressive. And it's this kind of thinking that's going to help us survive and even thrive in these hard times.
What did you think of it, Rob?
Yeah, I would agree, and I'm a fan and friend of Rand's. I think that I struggled a little bit with a couple of the points because they aren't relevant to me. I think the Google Maps one is a great suggestion that they need to overhaul the local listings because they're all incorrect. But his first suggestion is to enable links on Instagram. I'm the old guy and I don't use Instagram. Gmail should consider greater visibility for high resonance promotional emails. I don't use the 3 inboxes. I only use a sole inbox. He talks about the Reddit Secret Santa program, which I hadn't heard of, but he explained it and said, that the social network should start doing it. And I thought that was a clever hack. So overall, I love the spirit of the article, although I felt like 2 or 3 of them, I just didn't quite meet up with my kind of personal usage of the internet.
Well, I thought compared to what a lot of people have been writing about the crisis, I agree with Chris. It had a kind of unique tone to it, and I thought it was more inventive than what a lot of people. What did you reckon, Adrian?
Again, I'm going to agree with Chris and Rob. Seems fairly innovative and interesting solutions. The only one I mean, Rob says he doesn't use Instagram. I do use Instagram, and I know that there's no links or anything, and it's like really almost impossible to like link anything unless you have the link in bio tool for content creators. I don't see. I mean, whenever something like that is enabled, marketers typically just ruin everything, and that's just one of our traits. Whenever we get a new feature to play with, we typically like use it till everybody absolutely hates it, and then we have to move on to the next thing, and it's kind of just like that process. So I think some of these suggestions, if adapted, would eventually be ruined by marketers taking advantage of the situation. That's kind of like my only insight, because I know that I would.
And John, what's your thought?
Okay, my philosophy is control the things that you can control, and the two practical ones on here would be keeping your Google Maps updated, and then if Google sees this, somebody, and they give credits to people, add credits to industries that are hardest hit. The problem is, in a lot of these jurisdictions and municipalities, they're saying don't gather in large areas, and so anything that is around tourism or sporting events or any big events like hotels, bars, restaurants, they're going to vanish. So my advice is this: if you are a bar owner or a restaurant and you're doing takeout or delivery of any sort, what you can leverage is Google Posts. Now, you go into your Google My Business, and there'll be a link on the left-hand side that says Posts. Those are up for 7 days. Every time you post one, and if people are Googling your business to see if you're open still, they will see those posts right there. So if you're delivering or offering takeout at the curbside, that's something that you should do so that you can have some revenue during this time.
Oh, that's a great one. Thanks, John. And Spencer, what do you reckon of it?
You know, what I take away from Rand's comments is the inspiration for other large corporations to take let's call it a World War II mentality. And that is to say, if we all see this as a common enemy that we need to unite against, right, to cooperate, I see the opportunity for the large, especially the big six in Silicon Valley, to unite with giving back in a way that uses all the powers of their infrastructure and their monetary resources and so forth to, without being asked, do stuff that would be helpful. So in other words, we all know that everybody will remember the good deeds that are done today. And even though they don't need the market share and they don't necessarily need the capital, this will pay dividends down the road if they just voluntarily started manning their resources towards doing public good types of things. That could go across the whole spectrum, but everything from helping first responders or people in the medical industry to distributing, you know, packages and goods, whatever it may be. I think that's where the inspiration from his thing strikes me the most, that like entrepreneurs are thinking of it first. Why aren't those larger companies just stepping forward and all just sort of saying, hey, we're going to do everything we can, because if we do this now, we're going to be the ones you remember later as having really participated.
They're all flown to New Zealand. That's why, Spencer. On to the next story.
Before we move on, I just had a question. I got an email from Loom last week and how Loom was moving forward with extending a lot of their tools free for educational people, as well as extending their free trial and the limits available for free trials to like a limited video or something ridiculous while this was all happening. And we're using Zoom right now. And I was curious if anyone knew if Zoom was doing any sort of social responsibility stuff in terms of providing their tools to educators or anything. Because I think that company is missing from this list, because that's arguably one of the most valuable tools, I think, that is currently available for people doing remote work and stuff.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. I think Zoom's doing an amazing job, touch wood, keeping going, really. It must be pretty hectic at the Zoom headquarters. On to the next story. GitHub requires NPM Plans to improve infrastructure and experience. What did you think of this one, Rob?
I was going to ask the rest of the panelists. So I haven't written production code in in 6-7 years since my lead developer revoked my credentials, and but this seems like a big win to me. Like, what is the downside of this? Because when I think of, like, GitHub has been pretty responsible and pretty they do a good job with developers, and I feel like NPM being brought under that umbrella is a win, even if oftentimes we think of these mergers as providing fewer options. There are no other options aside from NPM, right? It's like we're all going to use that if you're going to code in Node. So I don't have an opinion other than to say, I only see pluses here. What are the downsides?
I'm going to ask Adrian then. Maybe Adrian knows. What do you reckon?
I'm with Rob. There doesn't appear to be much of a downside to this, except for the fact, some people are just, for reasons being only beknownst to them, are against acquisition. And
well, I think the main thing is they're a little bit worried because Microsoft owns it now, don't they?
Yeah, but I don't think there's much. GitHub, at least in my very limited observation, has appeared to only get better with time, and they got this whole actions thing going on now. It's been going on for a while, but it's just like the program just significantly improves every single year and every single day. And I can't really imagine that NPM being acquired by a company which is able to provide, some of the most significant development tools to the entire world could get any worse. I just don't see how that can happen.
I'll just quickly go back to Rob. That was one of the reasons why I chose the story, Rob. Why do you think Microsoft bought GitHub?
Well, I think Microsoft has always been a very developer-centric approach. They've always had that because, Bill Gates was a developer from way back in the day, and their developer tooling has always been superior to their competitors. When I say always, I'm going to start a religious war here, but comparing Apple's developer tools versus Microsoft's in the 80s and 90s, and even dare I say Objective-C, can you compare that to the C# development model and the ability to build for multiple platforms? Their tooling has just always been so strong, and I think that GitHub is just a kind of a natural extension of that.
Right. Anybody else want to comment on this, or should I go on to the next story? No takers. Let's go on to the next story then. Amazon accidentally sent out the email templates. I thought you would like this one, Adrian. What do you think of this one?
I would be lying if I said I've never sent out an email that had some lorem ipsum in it. It's a really, when you get that first email in your inbox, because you always send one to yourself just to make sure, right? So when you get it in your inbox and you check and you're reading, and then you get to halfway through and there's like a placeholder image or some lorem ipsum, that's like your oh shit moment. But no, it's cute, and it's a pretty good template. So they got some stuff going on here. I certainly have seen a few people. I've certainly received a few emails from my own customers because I get added as like a contact to the list because I'm on their support or whatever. And I certainly see a few oopsie mistakes from them as well. But no, it's just good. And, there's stuff to be learned from seeing other people's templates. And yeah.
Would you agree with most of what's said in the article?
Yeah. The template's rock solid. And yeah, no, I definitely agree with what was said in the article, sure.
So, Chris, how essential is email marketing in your own company's marketing outreach still in 2020?
It's the backbone. It's essential. But the big thing I wanted to point out with this one is I like to learn from big examples and other people's money in split tests. So like in Amazon, for example, I believe this story is true where Jeff Bezos doesn't let anybody change anything above the fold of the homepage without his permission. So that thing has been optimized to the tilt. This is how much of a nerd I am. I study the Amazon homepage a lot. And just as an example, like on my website for my software, we added some reviews. I copied Amazon's review structure exactly because I know they've tested it to the nines. So when something like this gets out, I think we can just learn from, bigger companies and other people's split tests. And I do like how short and sweet it is. and, and just clear call to action. When I see this, I think about, maybe I should start using buttons in my emails. I haven't done that in a while. I use links, like most people, but maybe I should go back to the old school button.
Yeah, it's something to consider. What do you reckon, John?
Yeah, one thing I noticed about this template is it's very simple. There's just the Amazon logo. There's like a short little image and just a few paragraphs of text. The whole thing is they want to make it a short, succinct, impactful email with a clear call to action. And there's a lot to be learned from that, because when people go through their inbox, they want to be able to scan it and understand like what's there. So if you can make the offer just easily understandable at a glance, that's perfect.
So, Rob, do you think there's any innovation still left in the email marketing sector? We've had some medium-sized startups in the past 18 months that have, I forgot, is it one of them, was it Super Email or whatever?
Superhuman.
Superhuman, and there's been a couple others. So do you think there's a bit more innovation to come?
Yeah, I think there's always innovation. And I think what's going to happen is, Superhuman came out and made a big splash, and they are really going after kind of the high use, the executive, the founder, the salesperson who's just in their inbox all the time. And that's on the inbox side. And then Basecamp launched hey.com.
Yeah, that was interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah. And they're kind of coming out almost like it's a counter to that, right? They don't want to do read tracking. They don't want to allow tracking pixels. So they're kind of trying to shut down a lot of the marketer tools to get, the ability to get open rates and such. So I think there is a battle to be fought on the inbox side. And then certainly on the marketer side of actually sending marketing emails, I think there's always room for more personalization, for, knowing more about your customers. And this is no surprise.
Sorry to interrupt, but if there was ever area that needed artificial intelligence, it was your inbox, wasn't it?
Indeed. Yeah, a lot of people have tried it, but just haven't been able to pull it off.
No. What do you reckon, Spencer?
The biggest takeaway from this I get is the Gary Provost, if I'm saying the accent on it right, Provost, but is the music and the melody. What I enjoy about this as a marketer and somebody that tries to teach people something, regardless of whether Amazon uses this, is that the way that he shows how to weave the various size sentences together, and it, when you do look at this colored, it brings it out so clearly that, like, today there's a trend in emails to do the marketer style, one line, double space between another line. It's really easy to read, but that has a whole different effect than something like this. This is taken literally like hearing a song, and that is more, okay, bite, 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 swallow, bite, bite, swallow. But beyond that, the thing that's interesting is, okay, Amazon is just like everybody else, right? They need to use the same tools, the same strategies, the same whatever. Somebody who's using email, today in the marketing automation world say, think of this as well. In the old days, the email was the place you got people's attention, you built trust, you taught people, you built a relationship. Now it's the exact opposite, in my opinion. With marketing automation, I feel like email is the most crowded channel. So it's just the, hello, we haven't seen you, come back to the home base method of doing things. So having something short, sweet, well-written that feels like, is probably the best way to get attention over, oh, here's another long form sales letter that's coming. So,
yeah.
Before we move on, I also wanted to point out something at the bottom of the email template that I see larger organizations do, and I don't see a lot of smaller organizations do it. And if it is a smaller organization, usually people do it in their personal email footer. And that's putting in links to resources, which I find actually gets a fair large number of clicks, at least on my end. If someone opens your email, it might be to do a specific CTA, but if they read past the CTA and don't click, they're going to end up at the footer. And usually the only thing in the footer is unsubscribe, right? And your address, maybe a phone number. You should give them other options once they get there as well. So their attention doesn't necessarily go there immediately. But if they don't like whatever the content of your emails is for whatever reason, give them other options to go other places. In the Amazon template here, you got the podcast or the blog. Facebook page, partners, documentation. And I actually, in our footer, I have a lot of that stuff as well. Facebook, documentation, partners, blog, etc. The list goes on.
Oh, that's a great tip. That's what I'm going to be doing this afternoon.
And that way, if they don't connect with your original CTA, they have options to go somewhere else. And I think more businesses should probably do that, because lots of businesses have lots of great content, but it's not always easy to get there. But in the footer of an email, you can just put direct links just to take you there.
Right. That's
I don't want to interrupt Chris's time, but I would say more important than the content of the email is the subject line. I would say today, 90% of your battle is getting somebody to click on it when it's in a sea of garbage.
Adrian, I had a question for you and for Rob with your experience at Drip. Does the number of links affect the open rate? Like, is that an issue?
Yes, it can. It's dependent on so many
deliverability,
factors.
I should say, I guess.
For deliverability, so at least in my experience, there's a tool called like Mail Tester, and you do get docked points if you have like way too many links. However, you get docked points if you have like 100 links in your email, and like ESPs are like really, really, really smart. Like inboxes are really, really smart. Google, Yahoo, and they can generally tell based on context and the layout of your email how much HTML in it and where the links are placed, if the email is like from a legit sender, a legit company trying to get in touch with a customer, or if it's just straight up spam. Right. And there's various tools on ways to do that. You can actually check ESP. I've been heard reports of ESPs checking the density of links in an email and where that density is located. Is it in the main body? Is it near the bottom? And how that works out. The higher the density, the higher the spam score, essentially. But if you put all your stuff down at the bottom, that's typically considered low density, low risk. So that's at least been my experience. I'm actually curious because Rob's been doing it a lot longer than I am.
Sure, yeah. Running Drip as an ESP, I mean, we sent, when I left, we were sending hundreds of millions of emails a month, or 150 million, just a tremendous amount. And so we saw a lot of crazy edge cases. And Adrian's right, the inbox providers are so smart these days, which is a good thing, because if people are opening my emails on my list and I suddenly send them a link, a kind of a link fest of, hey, here are the 10 links I saw this week, it doesn't suddenly all go to spam, because they understand that people are engaging with it. So yes, it's one of many signals, but if they're looking at 50 signals and link count is one of them, then it's like, don't go overboard. The bigger tip, and it's one mistake I see people make a lot, is if you're using email marketing software and you it's rewriting your links, right? Because it's doing click tracking. So instead of mydomain.com, it actually redirects through, drip.com and then gets to. So if you put in a raw link in your email and you actually put http:// as the text of the link, they don't like that. There are some places, some spam filters will immediately say, oh, it's a phishing attack because the text says mydomain.com, but it's going to drip.com en route. So you want real text rather than a real, an actual domain, in the text of the URL. It's a crazy, it's a weird edge case, but there are several that
you're saying you need the HTTP to match up with the actual thing you're saying it is. So you can't say spencerforeman.com, but it goes to google.com or something, because they'll freak out on that.
Exactly. And since most of us use rewritten links anyways, I never put HTTP as text in any email. It always says like, click here, or here's where you find it. And then that becomes the link.
Interesting point about if you're using Groundhog as self-hosted. Since it's self-hosted software, the rewritten links belong to your domain.
That's cool.
So problem solved.
It's a nice feature. Yep.
There you go. We're going to go for a break. We're back with some great stories. Got a great special guest, Rob Rayling, with us. And I think it's been a great show so far. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. I think the panel are reasonably interested. I haven't seen any of them dozing off yet. Rob's in his bunker. He's safe and secure. What more can you ask for? On to the next story. And it's from Rob's own podcast, Startup for the Rest of Us. Basically, I thought this interview you did with Kate was fantastic. The main points is, do you think Before I put it over to the rest of the panel, do you think she was little bit naive, or do you think she was just a little bit unlucky with some of the key people that she relied on? Because that was the key thread of the interview, wasn't it?
Yeah, Maren Kate, I mean, it was a tough go. She was young, and I wouldn't say naive. I do think that she was young and she trusted her advisors, and she raised funding and trusted their recommendations. And I think when you're growing a business this quickly, she went from 0 to 400 employees in, I forget, it was like 18 months or something. It was crazy. You know, I don't know that any of us, I don't know that me personally, that I could have kept my thumb on all of the areas that she needed to in order for this not to happen.
It's just a shame she didn't just. Do you think she had an advisor a bit like you, or somebody that had ridden that pony before, and she had a couple really trusted mentors? It could have gone better.
Well, I do. What's interesting, I do and I don't. There are so many moving parts in a company like this, and I think one of the things that obviously that came back to bite her is purely was the financial piece. And I think when you're building a company like this, a lot of us kind of move the finances. We say, well, it'll take care of itself, or I have someone in charge of that and they'll let me know. Well, it turns out the kind of CFO for hire that she had hired was doing math wrong. And
she did get, Jason, this week in startups was quite critical, wasn't he? A lot of people were quite critical of the business model. They said it was doomed from the start. I'm not so sure about that. What do you think?
No, the business, I don't think it was doomed from the start. It's working now. You know, startups.com runs it now, and it's a VA business with a subscription is a viable business if your unit economics make sense and if you have enough cash in the bank to make it to the point of profitability. And they were burning cash because they had raised a bunch of money, and which is fine. They raised $5.5 million, and it's okay to burn cash but you have to thread that needle once you start playing that game. You can't be off by 2 or 3 months, because that's essentially what happened. Is they had a math error in the numbers and it didn't work. So I think this is absolutely a viable business, and it is today. I mean, they've reworked it a little bit, but it's still very similar to what it was.
For those of us not familiar with the story, can you give us a little bit of a history lesson?
Sure. So Maren Kate started a company with a co-founder. It's called Zirtual, and it's essentially you pay a monthly subscription and you get X hours of a virtual assistant's time. So it's virtual assistants for hire on a recurring basis. And she bootstrapped it with her co-founder for 2 years. And then they raised a couple rounds of funding. They raised $5.5 million of venture over a couple years and grew this to 400, virtual assistant contractors. And then at a certain point got the advice that they needed to turn them into employees. And that was a big turning point, because then once they had the financial issue, it really hit them hard. So there were a couple key, I don't know, missteps or real turning points for him. One was going to employees, and then the other was this financial error of, oops, we thought we had a lot of runway, and it turns out we have, a couple months less than that. And then a round of funding, she was going to raise a bridge round, had a commitment, and a week or two before that was going to come through, the investor backed out. And so it was like this series of, when you're playing this close to the wire and you raise this much money and you're growing this quickly, any one of those things can hammer you. It's such a different world than self-funding or bootstrapping.
And she was really, I remember it. She was brutally attacked, wasn't she, Rob?
Yeah, it was the internet at its worst. It's when people get out of control and they don't know the full story, or they don't want to listen to the full story, and they want to just say, "Oh wow, how dumb were you to do this?" or "How dumb were you advisors?" or it's just a kind of a blame game, and I don't necessarily think that's helpful. But when you hear her talk through it in this podcast episode, or I've heard, I watched and looked through several other episodes, interviews she's done. There's a lot more nuance to it than that, right? Of just saying, "Oh, this one person or this one event is to blame."
What did you reckon about it, Chris?
I thought it was a great episode. I really enjoy Rob's podcast, Startups for the Rest of Us. And what it does really well is there's a lot of hero worship around entrepreneurship, SaaS, online businesses. And this episode, among many others, focuses on the struggle when things don't go well, and just provides a cautionary tale for other software founders who are on the journey that, making the leap from contractor to employee may not be the best move. Hiring a fractional CFO after you're above a certain stage is cool, but be careful. and funding isn't always the answer. So I just appreciate that about his show. And I thought it was really cool to actually pull that story out. I'm sure it's really difficult for Maren and Kate, but it's helpful for the startup ecosystem to hear when things don't go well.
So Spencer, you've been here, so you've got some real experience. Got any advice to the listeners and viewers about choosing the right key members of your team, really?
Well, I want to say two things. First of all, we talked about this the other day. You were joking, like there's only one vegetable in the vegetable bin. There's lots. I really appreciate Rob's show, and I've listened to it for almost all 400 and something episodes, because even before Mike left, it was very definitive. I can walk or ride my bike, and I know I'm getting this high quality format. So it starts, it gets into it, it gets to the point. You're like, in a good way, super anal retentive about keeping that. And
that's very different to my podcast, isn't it?
This is like somebody threw a cane against the wall. But I appreciate that in the show, because there's another show that I'll throw a comparable, but like Guy Raz at NPR I was talking about the other week, who has like How I Built This, has a similar format. There's storytelling. So you can get the drama from the entrepreneurs. And I see a thread here that on his show and in this particular episode, the drama of a solopreneur, you release this thing into the wild and it spreads like we're experiencing like a virus. It just goes out of control. One little mistake, and next thing you know, holy crap, my whole life is, I'm going to slip my wrists in the shower, like she said. So I appreciated the drama of it. As far as the hiring and firing, I mean, I'm one of those guys who comes from a wide array of experiences in the other sectors outside of tech. But when I dipped my toe into tech, 15, 20 years ago, I was always amazed coming from a Chicago practical background. I dipped in the toe when freemium was a thing. And I had my first experiences in Silicon Valley where the people were acting like an alternative universe, and they would have me do things with their attorneys, as an attorney myself, that I thought to myself, this is clearly ridiculous. Like opening up a hot dog stand and saying, okay, we don't know who's going to buy hot dogs or why they're going to buy hot dogs, but we're going to give away 1 trillion free hot dogs and see how it goes. And I'm saying in Chicago, if you gave away 5 hot dogs, the business would be over. So one of the things I see in these things is a venture capitalist mindset influencing an otherwise good idea, maybe accelerating it too fast, too far, out of control, where the founder herself probably would have been just fine had she not taken so much money and so much bad advice. And as a person who's seen all these worlds, and I'm also probably the older guy here, I would never go into a business anymore unless I thought first. That's the first thing. Is this where I want to end up? In other words, do I want to end up with a business that has 1 million people telling me what to do and holding my, cojones in their hands? Or I would rather keep it small and like a lifestyle business. And I think that's going to be an interesting thing for a lot of the people today who are being shaken up in our snow globe world. When the snow falls back down, they're going to have to think about like, am I going to go listen to some crazy boss or crazy money person, or am I going to run a business where I serve a smaller community, but I control it?
Yeah, Rob, I thought that was one of the other really great points of this, is that I think she expressed, because of her background, her blue collar background, that she felt a lot of the time as a fraudster, as a
imposter.
But I think you really got to understand, listen to people, listen to their opinions, think about things. But in the end, if this show really, if the shit really hits the fan, you're the one that's going to take all the blame. You're the one that's going to take all the flack. So you've got the right to think about what other people say. But if you want to go your own road, that's what you should do, shouldn't you?
Yeah, and that's what I like about what Spencer's saying is, the flip side of this story is so many companies, so many software entrepreneurs or tech entrepreneurs think that the only way to start a software company is to raise venture funding. Even today, after I've been banging the opposite drum for, 10 or 11 years, it's not that you should or should not raise venture funding. It's you should make your own decision and know what you're getting into and know what paperwork you're signing and know that the buck is going to stop with you. and that taking, there's a difference between bootstrapping and self-funding. There's a difference between taking a small amount of angel money and building a great lifestyle business out of that. Just because you take funding doesn't mean you can't, build a great $2, $3, $4 million business. But then once you step on the venture train, it really is a different trajectory. And that is not the aspiration of appearing on the, TechCrunch or the front page of a magazine and it's saying, hey, these founders raised $10 million. It's like, that's not success. That's the starting line. That's the starting line. And now they have the work to start, and they're more than likely going to go out of business, right? They're 98% of them now are going to go to business because, they have to go billion or go home. So that's part of the message, I think, is don't think that it's all or nothing, and don't think, just really know what you're getting into if you're going to take money.
It's like a student loan. It'd be like a kid who starts college go, I'm a success. I just borrowed $400,000.
Exactly. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. Yeah. And this comes from me. I've bootstrapped a bunch of software companies, and now I write checks to entrepreneurs. So I've been on both sides, and I still tell people, like, think about what you're doing and know what the terms are and know what you're getting into and know what the expectations are.
That's great. On to our next story. Delicate balance of building an online community business. I thought that Chris would be ideal. What did you think of this one? I thought it was a fantastic post, actually.
I thought it was really rich. If you build it, they will not just come. So there's a lot of wisdom in this article.
I thought that a lot of people building courses or online membership really need to read this article. What do you reckon, Chris?
100%. Like, you got a tooth and claw for your first 100, which they talk about, your first 100 community members. There's clicks and bricks, I call it, where you got to get offline. You got to do events. They've got like swag, t-shirts and whatnot. The power of the mini mastermind, like once you get over that point of, putting like-minded people together in small groups to solve problems together, that's like a clutch move right there if you can pull that off successfully. I think, Rob, you might have done that microconf stuff, and it's like I go to conferences and I hear people talking about microconf, and that's because Rob has done a lot of this work and his community members and other leaders behind the event to create a rich experience. It's not building an online community is not a passive income play. It's one of the most active plays you can do. And it's like the old way of doing things is you put your product at the center of the universe. If this case, it's an online community. But the better way to do it is to actually put your customer at the center of the universe. And then you surround them with things like courses, mastermind groups, live events, Q&A calls, expert webinars, all this stuff. Just put the customer at the center and then put more of them together. That's a community at the center. And it's not like you're just pushing your membership site. So yeah, this article is a solid read, and it just shows how challenging it is. And if you want to go big and do the real deal, you got to do a lot of different things to bring community out there into the world, and to do it online especially. It comes with some unique challenges.
So what do you reckon of this, John? Because I thought, I hear this a lot, you need to build community, but there's not much a plan of action, John. So I thought this was really quite a good article.
Yeah, so I'm familiar with Traffic Think Tank, and I'm familiar with the three people who started it. The big thing is originally, this is pitched as an intimate community where you can get access to people who are operating at a high level. That's the original thing. So they limited membership to 100 people initially, to where those people would spread what they're receiving as the value from this group. So this would not work for like every single person that would start this. The people starting it had to have some credibility at first, and people had to believe in those central people that they had stuff to share. I think that they also screened people that they were letting into this group at first. Then they kind of expanded it out. I think they said that it got to a point where the value that each person was bringing and the amount of people that were coming into the group kind of hit a point where it was going in the opposite direction. So that's the point where they had to figure out how to answer people, because everyone was getting used to wanting to talk to the known people, like the stars or whatever, and get advice from them, the people that they trust. But I think that is said too, there are some other people in the group that were stepping up and like being like leaders, which is usually what happens in any type of group, whether it's a Slack channel, Facebook group, mentorship group, or whatever else. But anything like this, even like with a product, as Rob and Chris and Adrian all know, it is really a lot about the community. Any type of product, and this group is, even an information sharing group is a product, and it's all about developing the community and curating the community in a way that it's going to have a good reputation, and other people are going to want to join because there's so much value being created.
Yeah, Rob, would you agree with this? A trend I'm seeing very definitely, like with HubSpot, the HubSpot University, you go to a lot of SaaS products. One of their differentials is a lot of them now are offering increased access to, when you join the SaaS product to get the actual software, you're also joining a community, and also access to a lot of training to be more effective in the particular sector that you're doing business in. I see that's a trend, definitely. What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, it's something that Lead Pages also did a really good job of that. They started a whole curriculum that they gave away for free, and then part of it they charged for. I was surprised, when I had my second SaaS app, it was an SEO keyword tool back in 2011 is when I acquired it. And I remember thinking, it's a keyword tool. People are going to sign up, they're going to get keywords. And more than half of the requests were, hey, how do I use these? What should I do with my title tags? How do I build it? And I was like, wait, I'm a tool, I'm software. And, this is almost 10 years ago now. It's obvious, but I realized, wow, the education is as valuable or more. And that's why, as any tool these days, it's hard to, the thing is it is hard to build a true community that gets along and that is going to interact with and help with one another. It's not so hard to build a lot of educational resources, right? And I think that's your in-between, is if you're going to launch, whether it's a SaaS app or a WordPress plugin or something, having some type of education that goes beyond just using your tool, but that is that high-level stuff that it comes off the top of your head and we think everyone knows it, but they don't. And taking a day or two out of, the first 6 months of launching and just creating either screencasts or writing some articles that are truly just strategy, like high level. I think there's a lot of value there, because like I said, that you can go on and then build a full-fledged community, but as someone who's done it a couple of times, it's a ton of work. And this article really outlines all the ways that the challenges of it.
I'm also interested in the way they were using Slack as a way of building a kind of independent business on this communication. Do you think there's more opportunities for that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I first saw communities being built around Slack maybe 5 years ago, and I was just kind of put my hand to my head and said, this is not going to work. Like, it's too synchronous. It's too, there's too much going on. But since then, I've seen communities make this work. There's like a 1,500 person design Slack that works really well. And we actually just within the past 2 months, fortuitously, launched something called MicroConf Connect. And it's a Slack group. It has 1,200 applicants. It's a free group. It's for founders, aimed at software founders or aspiring founders. And so far, the key though is we had pretty good reach, right? We have tens of thousands of people on email lists, and B, we have a moderator who knows how to manage a group this large, because that's the big thing. Is without moderation, it's complete chaos. But with a strong moderator and realizing, I need a lot of channels. There's just some like basic rules that you need to get in place. It does work. And as much as I would prefer, I'm an old school, I would love for it to be forums. It'd be more async. It's just what everyone has on their phones right now. And asking someone to come and check forums it's just one more barrier to them engaging. And that's why these Facebook groups and Slack groups have started to take over a lot of the community stuff, because everyone's in it, all day.
So Adrian, I noticed with your own software, you've been building out a lot of educational, been doing a great job with it. So how's that been? And have you learned, and do you think it's going to really, you must feel that it's going to really benefit the product in the end?
There's no question about that. And before I kind of launch into expanding on that, there's kind of two ways to sell and build a community. The number one is selling the community for the sake of the community, which we see with certain, well, they're like Post Status, for example. Their membership is like, you pay to be part of the community. It's the community is the product. And then there's the other way, which I'm more familiar with, which is building a community based on another product that is your core value proposition. And that's what I'm more familiar with. And if you find yourself in that situation where you have a product and you're looking like, all right, well, how do I get this community pillar? I see that there's three pillars of a community. The first of all is education, which is the educational material to bring people up to speed. You can't expect people who are uneducated in your product or whatever your product is helping them with to engage in your community, because they're going to feel not, they're going to be intimidated by seeing other people interacting in the community and not want to contribute because they're going to feel like they're not smart enough, or they're not going to be intimidated by that. So the first pillar is having the educational resources to get them up to speed. The second pillar is an actual gathering space, whether it's Slack or it's Facebook, and your product during your onboarding process. Every email, every page, everything should be getting them into that community space, the gathering space. If you go through the guided setup of Groundhog, the last page is join us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, get on Twitter, do all of these things so that you can be informed and you can get the educational resources that you need. The third pillar is FaceTime. You, the founder, or someone you designate or delegate in your company needs to get on calls or on office hours or do something where you can directly engage with your people so that they can feel the love and ask their questions directly to you, and you can provide live answers. And that is what I have found works really, really well for our communities. I do a weekly office hours. I set 1 hour aside on Tuesdays to get on the community and be like, hey, listen, here's what's going on. Here's the new stuff. Here is an interesting topic that I am going to train you on. Last week we did, stuff about, well, how do you create certainty in uncertain times and stuff like that. And before that, it was, all right, here's how you get payments set up on your WordPress website or whatever it is. And that's what I found, the three pillars that are working really well for us. So the first one, education, because you can't expect people to get engaged if they don't know what's going on. Number two is a gathering space, Facebook or Slack. And number three is you gotta have the FaceTime. You gotta be able to communicate directly in person using your voice with your customers.
So Spencer, just to finish up, it's another area where you've got enormous experience because you've built a couple very large community-based kind of groups, haven't you? What did you think of the article?
Yeah. So the points are well taken that everybody said, so I appreciate that. The matrix that I see happening with these kinds of situations, number one are you building a one-to-many or a one-to-one type of group? Because if you start out with the notion it's a one-to-many, you ultimately either turn into I don't want to be it, but I'm the guru of this gigantic following and all of it's on me, which can have its own problems or benefits, or you have the problem that these guys experience, which is if you start out as a sort of one-to-many in a small group and there's maybe 100 people, but it grows. I love that diagram where the user's value falls off the cliff, because it's just like in life. If you go to a conference, microconference, if there's too many people, you're like, F this. It's like, I don't get anything. I don't know anybody. I can't meet anybody. Everybody's in a corner. The second matrix is, as Adrian was addressing, it's like, what is it you're really doing with this thing? And so what I found is you have to start from the very beginning. Are you teaching people to help themselves, or are you teaching a bunch of newbies how to suck your nipple and get the milk forever? Because if you're teaching newbies, every single new person you add is going to be like Groundhog Day to you. And I don't mean Groundhog the product. I mean like Bill Murray, like, oh my God, times 1,000, I'm living the same nightmare over and over. And the group will never progress. It's just the old ones get fed up and leave, and the new ones come in like, oh, I wanted to ask you this question that's so brilliant, like they invented it. And you've heard it 1 trillion times. The solution that I found is really simple. If you start out with the notion, up front, look, you're all newbies. So here's how it's going to go. I'm going to be the guru, but I'm not going to be the accessible guru. I'm going to teach you what you need to know, and I'm going to throw it out there for any of you to consume. Talk amongst yourselves. The second thing is to say there's no value from you guys interacting, but if you want to do it, that's why they got Facebook. And don't try to build the community locally, which was where my expertise was for a while in the social networking sphere, because as soon as you build a private community, no offense, I love the product and we support it, but like Buddy Boss and BB Press and all those tools, you become a camp counselor. A camp counselor where you used to have 5 kids, then it's 100 kids, then it's 1,000 kids, and they're all fighting on the back of the bus. So it is possible to grow a large community, but with the takeaways that you guys all talked about yourself, you have to be very definitive from the get-go. Otherwise, you end up with a Maren Kate problem, which is you built this thing that's so successful, you want to kill yourself in the shower.
All right. I think that's great. Got any last words on this subject, Rob, or shall we wrap this show up?
I would just say that don't feel like, some people will come and say, in order to launch a software product of any kind, you should have a community first. And I don't believe that. You can have a community, you can not have a community, you can have an audience, you can not have an audience. It's just different ways of going about it.
So, wise words. Well, we're going to go wrap up the show. I'm going to drop the last story because I thought that was the weakest. So we're going to go on to our recommendations of the week. And I have got a recommendation. I know it's a shock, listeners and viewers. I've got a nice slider. Oh, yeah, I know, sliders. I don't particularly like them, but I've got a client that insisted. And there was some logic to the madness. So I was looking for something a bit better for Elementor than the pre-built one. And I found one, a really nice free one from BD Themes. And it's their Prime slider. And the free one is really quite amazing. And I've been knocking this out for this client and I've been quite impressed. Spencer, have you got a recommendation for the listeners and viewers?
Yes, I do. So one of the problems that we've been facing today, that we have 2 panelists here who are experts on at least, is because we do all the marketing automation that's across 35 plus different platforms, we're seeing people with varying degrees of success with their API calls and their webhooks back. So you do automation on WordPress with WP Fusion, sends a signal, and then crickets. Whereas yesterday it was like speedy, or worse, you have, let's say, a webinar with a WooCommerce checkout, you're trying to apply tags and magically nothing happens fast enough. So there's a plugin that's free, Query Monitor for WordPress, which allows one, hey Vito, which allows one to see the kinds of things that are going on your site and help to differentiate, is this an internal problem or is this an external API problem? In the last couple of weeks, for example, one of the things we do recommend, there's lots of good CRMs. One of them, which will go nameless, which is still great, has been shitting its pants for no reason they're telling anybody. I mean, it went from like hero to what's going on. And so as a result of that, this tool is really useful even for a layperson to use because you can see what's going on any particular transaction. And so it's worth even a newbie checking it out.
Oh, make sure it's in the chat, will you? So John, have you got a something you want to recommend?
Yeah, this is a recommendation, and this is not for a product or a link or anything like that. I know right now, like a lot of people are staying home, in your local municipality or your state or your county, they're telling you to stay home. And so a lot of people are doing delivery. One thing to keep in mind is a lot of these people who are doing the gig worker jobs, especially if it's like DoorDash, Instacart or anything like that, or Uber, they really don't earn that much money because the platform takes a lot of it from them. And if it's like Instacart, they're the ones standing in line in these long lines doing the shopping for you. So my tip to you is, if you have the means, which most of us do here, we're in digital marketing, please tip these people more than you normally would. Tip them excellently because right now, their finances depend on it. And also, like, your orders and stuff are going to stay in queue a long time if they don't think it's worth their time. So, just be considerate of other people and, give freely. So
that's great. And Adrian, have you got anything you want to recommend?
I'll second Spencer's recommendation. Query Monitor is a lifesaver. for anybody building WordPress websites for like, their MVP or whatever. It has saved me countless hours. There's a lot of HTTP API stuff that goes on in Groundhog, a lot of DB stuff, and Query Monitor has helped us find and fix a lot of it over the last year and a half. So I'll second that one.
True. Chris, have you got anything you want to recommend to the listeners and viewers?
Yeah, I wanted to recommend the Notability app. So if you're like communicating visually with your students or coaching or your team, if you have an iPad Pro and an iPad Pencil deal, it's super cool tool for communicating visually with your team. So check that out.
I'll put that into our chat. And I've got Vito. Vito's with us. You got here a bit late, Vito. We're wrapping it up.
Well, I thought I was on time because I think that the timings changed or something. But this is where I always come on board, 4:30.
No, I think it's daytime.
Welcome to daylight savings, boy.
Yeah.
We move it in America because in Britain, listeners and viewers, they have daytime, but they move it 3 weeks later. And it always confuses people from the UK.
Yeah. So I guess that would be my recommendation. Check some,
check your daytime
time zones. Yeah.
Right. Rob, obviously being your special guest, you're not expected to have anything that you can recommend, but do you have anything you want to recommend to the listeners and viewers?
I just came up with it. I didn't know that was a thing, but if you're stuck at home and you have kids, GoNoodle.com or GoNoodle on YouTube. It is just very light exercise for kids, and they place. And I mean, I have 2 9-year-olds and a 13-year-old, and while they mock it because it's a little young for them, they still move around. They get their bodies going. So, and it's free, on YouTube. So that's something we've been trying to do.
You've got to get that body moving.
Exactly. Yep.
Exactly. There we go. Rob, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. So if people want to learn more about you and what you're up to, Rob, what's the best way?
Sure. If they're podcast listeners, Startups for the Rest of Us is in all the podcatchers. If they want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Rob Walling.
Right. And Chris, people want to find out more about Lift LMS. What's the best way and find out more about what you're up to?
You can install the free Lifter LMS plugin to your WordPress website. You can also find us on lifterlms.com and check out our podcast called LMS Cast.
It's a great podcast. And John, what's the best way of finding out more about you and what you're up to?
2 ways. The way that you can see me like every day is on my YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and search either Lockdown SEO or John Lock SEO, I'm posting every single day SEO tips. I think I've missed like 2 days in the last 16 months. But the other way is go to my website, which is lockdownseo.com.
Oh, that's great. And Spencer, what's the best way of finding out more about you and what you're up to?
Right. If you're interested in anything to do with sales funnels with WooCommerce or marketing automation, you can find me at launchflows.com, or the free Facebook group is useful for you. Any questions across the spectrum of these WordPress things, that's facebook.com/groups/launchflows.
Right. And Adrian, what's the best way to find out more about you and what you're up to?
You can go to Groundhog with 2gs.io, and you can get all of the links to our 3 pillars of education, or community, rather, education, gathering space, and FaceTime, where you can speak with me and ask me questions about digital marketing.
And I even asked Vito. Vito, what's the best way of finding more about you?
It's a good deal. Like 3 minutes in, and I already have a pitch. So you can find me at WP-Feedback.co. We actually just now launched something to help people in these kind of trying times. So there's 200 slots for people that will get 90% off for the next 2 months. And we did it for all of our pro users as well, just to kind of alleviate some of the stress in the upcoming months.
Right, that's great. And if you want to support the show, folks, the best way is go to the WP-Tonic website and join our newsletter. We've had a load of new people joining the newsletter recently, and I want it to increase it. You'll get a newsletter about e-learning and also all the latest news and recommendations.
Can I find one more, Jonathan?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so this is something I forgot about too. Adobe is they're letting people take like 2 months off of their subscription. They'll give you a credit. I'll put it in chat, but there's a number that you call, and then you hit 1, and then 2, and then you get on the line with somebody. Just tell them because of the COVID-19, you want to take a couple months off your subscription. They'll credit all your Creative Cloud.
I'm mind blown that Adobe will do anything like that. There we go. On to so back to the newsletter. So join the newsletter, and also you'll be put in to win a prize, a monthly prize. Anybody that subscribes during the month will join the prize draw, and they can win a prize up to a value of $100 or more. And I'll be announcing the winner next week for that. It's been a great show. Thanks, panel. And I think we've had a great discussion. We'll see you next week, listeners and viewers. Bye.